I'd like you to try to imagine a world where you can access anything you ever wanted, whenever you wanted it, without the maintenance or cost of owning it. But there's a catch. You'd have to share, even with strangers. It's not as crazy as it sounds because there are people around the world that are choosing to live life this way. And one by one, their choices are helping to create new economic activity while also reshaping how we consume, socialize, work, and even govern. I'm here to talk about how the global movement of sharing is unfolding and why I feel it's important. And the story begins at our home. If I were to ask you to take a mental snapshot of your storage locker or your garage, what would you see? Maybe it's that old camping gear buried deep back in the corner that you forgot you owned. Or that bag of clothes that you're waiting to fit into again one day. Or perhaps it's that electric drill that you were just dying to get. When was the last time that you actually used it? Well, if you're like me and the other 80 million North Americans that own an electric drill, chances are it's only going to be used for an average of 13 minutes ever. We love our stuff, but the reality is that it just sits there idle, collecting dust, losing value over 90% of the time. We have so much stuff that North Americans alone spend over $25 billion each year just to store it all, making our self-storage industry generate more revenue than the GDP of almost half the countries in this world. These habits that we've created, where we buy stuff, use it a bit, store it, and then dump it, creates a lot of waste, and it's highly inefficient. But the question I ask myself is, what if the other 6 billion people on the planet watching our consumption-happy ways also want an electric drill? How much storage would we need then? We've somehow created a system that is fundamentally flawed and unsustainable. Building an economy on this trajectory makes as much sense as building a high-rise on sand. Things will likely crumble. But we're pretty set in our ways, and it's going to take a very compelling alternative for us to change our habits and reroute our future. Now, for any sort of social change to happen, there's a few essential ingredients. First, you need the motivation for change. Then, you need the tools and resources to get you there. And finally, you need the power of the crowd or critical mass to help drive it forward. Now, our motivation to change our habits is growing every day, and it's different for everyone. For some, the motivation is environmental. Some people totally get we've got resource issues, and they're just a bit more mindful on the impact of their choices. For others, the motivation is convenience. They just want what they want, when they want it, with minimal hassle. And then, of course, there's those that are financially motivated. I'm sure we can all think of somebody who gets very creative on ways to save or make money. These are just some of the motivations that are helping forge a shift in consumer values from one of the need to own your own stuff to one of a more sharing and collaborative nature, where the access to things is more preferred to than the ownership of them. Now, I'm sure anybody here with siblings hears the word sharing and wants to roll their eyes. As the youngest kid of 7, I get it. I had to share everything, and I always got the last of it. Hand-me-down clothes, choice of bedroom, even bath time. Can you imagine the color of the water when it came to my turn? Yeah, I think it's fair to say I had a slightly jaded view of sharing as a child. And yet, as an adult, it amuses me to find myself still sharing in almost all aspects of my life. I'm even in the business of it. For example, here is my house. It's in a beautiful but expensive area. So to make it affordable, it's divided into 5 micro apartments. And these are some of my housemates and close friends. And over time, we started to resemble a variation of Seinfeld. And I love it. As an entrepreneur, sometimes my house doubles as my office. And because you don't want Kramer just sliding in during a conference call, I rent a desk at a co-working space downtown, where I share the lease with other like-minded professionals. This is just one of hundreds of co-working spaces that are popping up around the world. These are some of my cars. Well, not mine exactly. I share them with over 100,000 people in my city alone. But it's cool because I have wheels when I want them, and the best part is that my membership is valid when I travel to cities like Amsterdam, Montreal, and Houston. And here is my husband. Not sharing him. Nope. I'm mainly motivated to share these resources, not only because it allows me to access more things for less, but because it adds a certain quality of life that just works for me. And although this way of life might seem unusual to some people, like my entire family, I'm pleased to say that I'm not alone, as there are millions of other people making similar lifestyle choices. And our choices are helping to support new forms of businesses, generating new types of revenue that is quickly adding up to the hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, when something generates that much money, it gets its own name, many of which refer to as the sharing or collaborative economy, which is like a fancy term for people just sharing their skills and their stuff with each other for a fee, for barter, or for free. Think of it more like a peer-to-peer marketplace where you can exchange, rent, lend, or borrow your own goods and services directly with each other, even strangers, without the need of a third party. Now, sharing, of course, is nothing new. We already share a lot, like our libraries and our community centers. But it's evolving, and it's doing so at an accelerated rate. And we can thank in part this. Sharing has hit the digital age. The rise of mobile technology and social media has created a world that is more connected and integrated than ever before. Technology has allowed us to take sharing from the local forum to the global network. And tech entrepreneurs are capitalizing on this whole new frontier of market opportunity by creating web applications, or platforms as they're called, that help facilitate the sharing of our stuff. Literally 1,000 apps are released on the marketplace every single day, many of which are designed to help us collaborate and share easier and faster. These platforms are the support network for the sharing economy, and they're driving growth in almost every sector imaginable. Take, for example, the service sector. Platforms like TaskRabbit and Elance allow people to offer their own unique services, like designing a logo or reviewing a business plan for a small fee. What this allows is it creates a whole new wave of new freelance entrepreneurs that allow them to work under their own terms. And as it grows at an exponential rate, it is quickly redefining the nature of work and the traditional workplace. Then we have the goods sector. There are dozens of platforms that allow us to rent almost everything under the sun, from our bikes to our tools to even our pets. Bike sharing is actually now the fastest growing mode of transportation in the history of the planet, and has shown no signs of slowing down. But the sector that's the closest to me and the center of my work is the food sector. I recently learned that we throw out almost 40% of the food we produce. That's twice the amount of food that's required to feed the world's most hungry. But then I learned that one of the root causes for this food waste is because it's just easier and cheaper to throw it out than to manually coordinate and find the right end user. Which tells me we don't have a food shortage problem, we have a connection problem. So luckily, there's the development of new food exchange platforms that connect excess food with those who need it in automated and intelligent ways. This helps us reduce or lets us waste less and feed more. These types of platforms are very significant, and they're new types of business models, and they're being applied in countless industries. And the platforms that get global traction and buy-in are quickly becoming what I refer to as the superstars of the sharing economy. Take Uber, for example. It is now the world's largest taxi provider yet it owns no vehicles. Airbnb is now the world's largest accommodation provider, yet it owns no real estate. They're just tech platforms coordinating people sharing their stuff. These platforms are showing how technology is allowing us to take an old community practice of sharing and transforming it into a profitable business model that's disrupting business as usual in a really big way. Now, when something creates this big of a disruption, it's bound to have ripple effects, and not everybody's a fan. Governments and regulators, for example, are struggling to respond quick enough to the changing ways, like how to legislate it, how to tax it so that the wealth is shared more, and of course, how to keep people safe. Because safety is the biggest risk to the success of the sharing economy. But what we're seeing now is the rise of reputational rating systems where people can rate each other based on their own experiences. What this is doing is it's creating a new type of social currency that is self-regulating. It's also embedding a type of trust into the system, allowing and giving people the confidence to transact with strangers. It's not perfect, but it works. The other area that the sharing economy is shaking up is big corporate, because the more people share, the less they buy. For example, every shared car on the road takes 12 to 14 privately owned vehicles off. That's a huge financial setback for car manufacturers. But luckily, many companies are realizing that if you can't beat them, join them. And so now we're seeing companies like Toyota, GM, Mercedes, BMW, all offer their own variation of a car sharing service. This is an indication that it's not going away anytime soon. And there are dozens of other household names also pivoting their business models to capture this new market and remain relevant. And it's no wonder, because the sharing economy is already being heralded as one of the defining economic features of the 21st century. And Time magazine has declared it as one of the top 10 ideas that will change the world. Maybe it's too soon to tell, but one thing is clear. It continues to evolve at an explosive rate. But how it evolves is ultimately dependent on how we shape it and how we fuel it. We have the motivation for change, and technology is giving us the tools to get us there. But it's up to us, the power of the crowd, to drive it forward. So I encourage you to go back to that mental snapshot of your storage locker and take a look at your stuff. What's just sitting there idle, underutilized, collecting dust? What can be put back into circulation to get more value out of it? Maybe renting out that extra room in your house is a little too weird for you, but just try renting the tools or the camping gear if you're just going to use it once. There are boundless opportunities of the sharing economy, so I encourage you to do some research and try something new. You can save money, you can build community, it's endless. I believe that we are the authors of how this next chapter of our history unfolds. And I believe that if we just organize our global resources with just a bit more sophistication and efficiency, we truly can create a world where we can access what we need when we need it, while also creating a more sustainable, resilient, and connected future.